Hey, Cypher here. In the Heart of the Sea is a fun movie that shows the travails of the Essex, whose 1820 adventure was the inspiration for Melville's famous Moby Dick. It has perhaps the best showing of what it was like to sail in the golden age of sailing. That being said, it also has a rather unforgivable framing device that is so easily fixable that I am rather confused as to how they made such a blunder. The Essex was a whaling vessel that began its final voyage in August of 1819, and would become famous, as the movie says.
The Essex was stowed by a white whale, and those of us that survived in ill-equipped whale boats had to commit abominations in order to survive.
After the upstart Captain Pollard made some mistakes in how to rig the vessel during a squall, the ship lost her top gallant sail and 2 boats. She had trouble finding whales in the Atlantic and decided to swing around the Cape into the Pacific Basin. She stopped in Atacama and the Galapagos for resupply. While at Charles Island, the crew accidentally set fire to the entire island, destroying it. After that, they headed north into the open sea, where land was over 1,000 miles away in all directions. When they came across a pod of whales, one boat was dashed by a whale's flipper, and another one was bucked. The following day, while most of the crew were out trying to catch one of the pod, the crew left aboard the Essex were approached by a gigantic sperm whale on the surface. It acted oddly and then swam directly towards the ship and crashed into it extremely hard, breaking the vessel's stern. Eventually, the whale dislodged itself and swam away, leaving the Essex slowly sinking. The crew gathered what materials they could and left in the 3 remaining boats. They chose not to go to the closest island for fear of indigenous cannibals, which will become quite ironic later. They managed to land on an island in the Pitcairn group. After reprovisioning and almost eating the entire island dry, they left again, with 3 men marooning themselves on the island instead of sailing in the boats. They were at sea in the boats for so long that the crew was beginning to die of thirst and malnutrition. The 3 boats drifted apart one night to the point that they could not see each other any longer. Eventually, it was decided to resort to cannibalism as provisions ran low and men died. One boat took the horror to a new level by deciding to kill for meat, chosen by lots. Eventually, 2 of the boats and the 2 who had survived on the island were rescued, having spent 3 to 4 months surviving in such wretched conditions. This movie commits the cardinal sin of not having done a cursory look at the historiography on the subject, for there are dozens of books. The screenwriter seems to have done only a surface read of the book for which the title is derived. Unfortunately, they don't even seem to have read that particularly thoroughly. The title of the movie comes from a fairly well-regarded history. This is not an unknown event. People have been writing about it constantly since it happened beginning in 1821. There is no reason why they couldn't have read the first book on the subject, which breaks one of the key plot details of this movie. The movie is told through the eyes of one of the boys named Thomas Nickerson. It begins with Herman Melville seeking an audience with Nickerson, who is all distraught about revealing the horrors of the journey. We are told that he is the last remaining survivor of the Essex alive in 1850, and that this was how Melville came to know the story of the Essex. This is a really weird way to start, and incredibly false. Numerous survivors were still alive in 1850, and it was not Nickerson's account that inspired Melville. Yet the movie makes it out to be some dark secret only spoken in whispers.
There. It is done. It is out.
You've never told anyone?
No.
Not even your wife?
Do you think she could ever love me if she knew the abominations I had committed?
All they had to do was change the name from Nickerson to Chase, and it would make a little more sense. Owen Chase is the main focus of the story anyways, so why not? Chase had authored an account about the Essex that was published in 1821. Melville had actually met Chase's 16-year-old son while sailing on a whaling vessel himself, and that son gave Melville a copy of his father's book. That would have been a much better introduction to this whole thing, but instead we have to see some reclusive Nickerson, which he never really was as such. It was Chase who was legally declared insane. I do have to add, though, that there were other whaling stories that inspired Melville, especially the Moby Dick, which was a white whale that seemed to take a great deal of damage and attacked numerous boats. It was publicized in 1839 after having taken several skirmishes to subdue the whale. That's obviously where Melville got the name for the book. This movie isn't all bad historically. Where it really shines is where it shows people working. It clearly shows how the whaling business worked in the 1820s. From the craziness of Nantucket and Massachusetts, sailing problems, catching whales, all the way to rendering whales into oil. The whole process of whaling is shown in fascinatingly accurate detail. You really get a sense of what it took to do this and the hierarchical society that formed around the industry. They explain its importance.
Oh, Father, grant that your glorious light shine on these men. Ensure them a prosperous voyage, that they may return safely and with a full ship, so that the white flames of Nantucket whale oil may continue to keep light in our homes, city streets safe from sin in the night, and fuel the machines of industry that drive our great nation forward as our noble species evolves. In your name we pray.
They even hint at the nascent oil industry to come.
You know, I heard a man from Pennsylvania drilled a hole in the ground recently and found oil. That can't be true.
I heard it too.
Oil from the ground. Fancy that.
That scene was supposed to happen in 1850, whereas the oil rush wouldn't really begin until 1859, but that is an interesting nod to the whole thing. Either way, there's just so much that is done to illustrate the reality of the whaling industry, and it is glorious to behold. This movie is probably better at showing the complex life of a sailor than anything made since 1922, when Hollywood filmed actual whaling for a movie called Down to the Sea in Ships. The whale is repeatedly referred to as a white whale. It was just a normal sperm whale. The movie does this to call back to Moby Dick, but albino whales are incredibly rare, and normally smaller than their gray-colored counterparts. The ship did not go down in some fiery explosion. It actually took days before the crew abandoned the wreck that was still afloat as they left it. There was certainly plenty of oil to cause a massive fire, but that is not told of by either of the first-hand accounts that have been published. After the whale sunk the Essex, it was never seen again, yet this movie shows it chasing the crew thousands of miles, as though Chase was the real-life Captain Ahab. It even attacks the boats as they are nearing the island. That attack is contradicted in the movie by showing that all three boats managed to leave the island unharmed. Later it's shown taunting Chase as he chooses not to kill it. That never happened, and it's conflating reality with Moby Dick. The crew is shown to abandon the island because they find some dead bodies. This did not happen. They left the island because they had stripped it of resources, and they thought they had enough to continue the journey. It is a good thing that the cannibalism parts are simply explained rather than shown.
We removed the organs, separated his limbs from his body, and cut all the flesh from the bones. After which, we closed the body. And we sewed it up as decently as we could and committed it to the sea. We ate the heart first.
I think that might have been a bit too gruesome for some viewers. When it came to draw lots for who would be killed for cannibalism, they are shown drawing sticks. Everything about the scene is incorrect. It was actually sheets with a black mark on one of them. It was not Captain Pollard who drew the bad lot, but Coffin. He did not commit suicide either, because it was actually his friend who drew the lot to do the deed. This suicide to save Pollard is supposed to be the end of a story arc where Coffin was shown to be a stuck-up jerk the whole time.
First drills in tomorrow, 6 bell sharp.
You're not even east of Halifax, sir.
What's your name?
Coffin. Henry Coffin.
He's the captain's cousin, sir.
Well, well, Mr. Coffin. You think a whale knows if it's east of Halifax?
You don't fool me, Mr. Chase.
Mr. Coffin?
That right?
You put us here. You know you put us here.
Hey! Mr. Coffin, put the pistol down!
Say you're scared!
Mr. Coffin, put the pistol down!
You know what happens when the food and water runs out?
Do as the captain says, Coffin!
I just want to see the landsman
Mr. Coffin, put the
scared.
pistol down. That's an order!
Why waste water on a dead man?
Them two men have known each other. Sailed together since childhood. Now tell me, could you sit there and watch your own brother die?
Simply a matter of numbers, Mr. Chapel. There's not enough for all of us.
This is contradictory to the real boy, and kind of malicious of the movie to do such a disservice to him. Coffin was kind of Pollard's ward for the voyage, and the captain was going to redraw the lots. But Coffin kindly said, "No, I like my lot as well as any other." That is far more dramatic, and would have been a much better scene than the one here. The end is shown as though everyone quit whaling after this. In fact, nearly every member of the crew went back to sea within months. Chase didn't become a merchantman for years, and instead went back to whaling. But I guess this movie has to make it seem like these people were so affected that they couldn't even live with themselves after this experience. You know, it's that whole PTSD thing that movies are so stuck on. They appear to have gotten over this pretty quickly, with the exception of Chase, who had a bit of a problem later in life. The movie says this about Moby Dick.
It will be a work of fiction, Mr. Nickerson. Inspired by truth. But I don't believe I'll feel the need to use all of it.
I don't think they see the irony in such a statement. Moby Dick was completely fictional, not just a fictionalized account of this. It used a number of other stories as inspiration, as well as Melville's own experience as a green hand. The movie's unwillingness to deal with reality behind its story is exactly the opposite of what that quote was about. Well, that's about it. Where the movie shines is the parts where it shows the process of whaling. Where it fails is the framing device it uses to tell the story as if it's the real-life equivalent of Moby Dick. It's fun, but troubled. So, thanks for watching. Tell me what other based on a true story movies need busting in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and check out some previous episodes. I'll see you next time.